basically every automaker, though, including the legacies, have set some kind of target, public target for EV penetration, what they want to do by 2030, by 2035.
I mean, because they're all in the EV business.
They're all in the EV business, and that's the way the market is going. They've all sort of accepted that. But none of the targets are as aggressive as these. And so this is going to light a fire under them and make them go even faster.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by Energy and Environment Reporter Jeremy Beaman. Jeremy, the Biden administration, they really want electric vehicles to be more widely adopted. They've brought out the carrots. They've busted out the sticks. What are they doing?
Some more sticks with these regulations they just dropped. So the EPA dropped emissions stringency guidelines, basically, for model years 27 through 2032 vehicles. So basically what these function by putting limits on how much CO2 equivalent can be emitted from a combustion engine vehicle, basically. And the idea is to increase penetration of electric vehicles, zero emission vehicles, but electric in particular, considering they're the most predominant zero emission technology in the marketplace. And this really is one of the biggest climate energy regulatory stories of the year so far. Biden, back in 2021, set a target of 50%. He wanted half of all new vehicle sales by 2030 to be all electric.
Right.
Basically the assumptions and forecasts associated with these regulations would go even further, and such that by 2032, the penetration might be 67%. So 2 in every 3 vehicles, new vehicles sold, would be a battery electric vehicle. So a much different landscape than we have now. I mean, last year in 2022, battery electric sales were about 6% of new sales. So there's a long way to go. But these regulations are meant to sort of compel the industry to devote their engineering prowess towards making this technology the one that is the one that's on the road.
Are these goals seen by people as maybe being a little bit too aggressive, or people pushing for even more?
Certainly, many free market interest groups, Republicans, immediately push back on these regulations as overburdensome. And that they would be harmful to automakers.
Right.
EVs are more expensive on average than a combustion engine vehicle. The technology for a combustion engine's been evolving for 100 years, and so automakers have that down to a science. And so the argument against the regulations, of course, is that they're too expansive. They'll limit families' options and so forth. The automakers. The regulations come with a comment period, so we'll be able to see what each one of them has to say about this.
Right.
Basically, every automaker, though, including the legacies, have set some kind of target, public target for EV penetration, what they want to do by 2030, by 2035.
I mean, because they're all in the EV business.
They're all in the EV business, and that's the way the market is going. They've all sort of accepted that. But none of the targets are as aggressive as these. And so this is going to light a fire under them and make them go even faster. And there are carrots on the other side as well that will compel them. The EV tax credits that were passed in the Democrats' reconciliation bill last year. So we haven't really heard from manufacturers just yet on these. We will, but certainly they're moving in that direction. But now the question is how feasible. That's the question that's going to be worked out. Is how feasible is this? Because there's this whole other side to this. In order to have all of these new electric vehicles, you have all these other associated changes to the U.S. economy that have to happen to support that change, really.
Right. Well, there's the manufacturing component, which is clearly very important, but there's also what consumers want, what customers will buy, and there does seem to be, partly because of cost, as you mentioned, but there does seem to be some consumer resistance or hesitancy around electric vehicles.
Well, because it is kind of a fundamental shift in, I mean, the technology in these cars, they operate very similarly, but how they fuel is very different.
Sure.
And basically what the White House has said is their ultimate goal is to make it as easy to charge an electric vehicle as it would be to fill up your car at a gas station. It's pretty easy to fill up your car at a gas station, in 2023. You don't have to go far along the highway to find a gas station. Find an EV charger, often you do have to go far, and there are a lot of pockets in the country where there's no charging access, or there's no fast charging access, and if it's not fast charging, you could be charging for 8 hours. Some people don't have time for that. So the administration is doing all of these different things at once to try to move the entire sector that way, and it includes the EV charging piece. There's federal money for that. There's federal money on the consumer side to incentivize purchases. And then you have the regulatory side too that's kind of pushing everything in that direction. One important thing is countries are setting these targets left and right for what they want to do. A target is nothing but something on a page.
Right.
What countries have to do to get there is implement these kinds of regulations or laws in order to compel industry to do things, or to prevent them, in some cases, from selling certain vehicles, which is kind of the approach California, which has a dispensation from Congress, is taking.
Have there been any developments on the EV tax credit disconnect between Biden and Manchin?
Say that again?
Have there been any developments on the EV tax credit sort of disagreement between the president and Senator Joe Manchin?
Well, certainly on the implementation side, yes. What Manchin wants, and this is kind of Republicans' line has been in the last few days since these regulations were dropped, is that this is going to strengthen the Chinese who have the commanding hand in making electric vehicles and all the parts that go into them. And the Inflation Reduction Act was meant basically by Manchin's design to kind of cut that cord and help the United States move along and have a bigger role in manufacturing these things. So if things work out the way Manchin intended them to with the bill and how it's implemented, the idea is for this not to strengthen China, for these regulations and the increase in EV sales not to embolden China. I think the administration is confident that the way they're implementing them will do that. Manchin has quibbled quite a bit with some of the particulars, which we don't necessarily have to get into. But there is still this acrimony between Manchin and the administration about this. And I haven't seen him chime in on these standards in particular.
Right.
But I wouldn't be surprised if he has a similar line as many of his Republican colleagues.
It's just not easy to make it easy to EV.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy. You can read Jeremy and subscribe to our Daily on Energy newsletter at washingtonexaminer.com.